Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming back this week for our second cocktail hour chats with the 9th Biennial Artists. I'm Jodi Lundgren, the exhibits curator at the museum. I don't know if I said that last week, so it's good to introduce myself. But we are doing this as a series of mostly Tuesday night cocktail chats with 30 of the 66 artists in our South Dakota Governor's 9th Biennial Art Exhibition. So instead of having a reception, because we're still kind of coming out of the pandemic, we decided to do these virtual talks. We're excited to hear from folks each week through June 8th. One week will be June 3rd, a Thursday, instead of June 1st. Others will all be Tuesdays, 5:30 to 6:30 Central Time. So just a quick brief background on the Governor's Biennial. It's a show that has been operating since 2003, so we're in our 9th biennial here. And the mission of that show is really to encourage South Dakota artists to celebrate our heritage and future of visual arts in the state, and to connect artists across the state. Oftentimes in a largely rural, spread out state, there's little pockets of artists that don't know each other that well. So the show is a great way for artists to be exposed to each other as well as to the public, because the show travels for roughly a year. So it's every couple of years. We take about a year to organize it. It's organized collaboratively across 4 institutions in the state. So after we have our exhibition here which is open now at the South Dakota Art Museum, we'll have it on display through June 13th, and then that will travel to the Washington Pavilion in Sioux Falls. From there, it will go to the University Art Galleries at USD in Vermilion, and then it will close out at the Doll Art Center in Rapid City, roughly a year from when we started. So we're excited to have 4 artists with us here tonight. Like I said, I've tried to kind of group the artists based on some sort of common thread across their works in this exhibition, which isn't, entirely indicative of their whole body of work. But for these 4 artists, I kind of used the theme of sunsets, color and light of landscape, and moonlight. And a couple are, we've got more traditional watercolor and oil painting, but one is a work in wool fiber, another is a weaving. So I love that mix of different media, more traditional or non-traditional ways to depict those gorgeous color and light of sunsets and moonlight that we have in the state here. So like I said, I will keep it brief so we can give each artist about 10 or 15 minutes to talk. And so with that, we will pass it off to our first speaker, Carol Gooey. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. I am going to attempt to share my screen. So this is the piece that is in the biennial, and it is wool felting. I am drawn to the sunset because I am a night owl. I do not see very many sunrises because I just don't. But I think that I've always been drawn to the sunset and the night as opposed to the sunrise, because it's the end. It's the end of the day. It's the end of all the busyness. And it's a time when I can go into my own life. The phone stops ringing, emails get less, and it becomes a quiet time of more contemplation. And I'm lucky to live in Vermilion, where we have gorgeous views of the sunset every night. It's a spectacular show that nature puts on for us. And it's almost every night that I'm taking a photo or 2 or 3 of the sunset, just because it's better than the one that was before. The colors are different. It's just something that I'm always in awe of. I find the land really important to my well-being and to my sense of calm. To me, it's a meditative space, even though we see great energy in the land, especially from up on the bluff when storms come. and things, you can see that power and energy. But for me, it's always a return to a place that gives me solace, and a place that I want to return to again and again and again. But as I said, this is needle felting. If you don't know what needle felting is, it is a sheet of felt, but it's thicker than the normal felt that you would buy at Walmart or the store. It's more maybe a 1/4 inch thick piece of felt. And then the colored, the background is a solid color. You can get it in a variety of colors. But then the colors are made with, in this piece, with wool roving, which is just loose wool, which I'm sure Phyllis knows all about with her weaving. But it's just the loose wool, and then there's a needle that the one that I used on this has, it's like a pen that has about 3-inch long needles on the end, and you place the felt onto a mat that's a couple inches thick, and then you basically just stab the needle until you get the felt, the roving to bind with the felt base. And you can add colors over the top, you can pull them, you can use thicker pieces or very thin pieces. It was just a process that I was really interested in finding out more about and exploring and seeing how that changed the way that I saw the landscape. And then I just have a couple other things to show you. This and the next work are oil pastels on canvas. They're much quicker to do than the needle felting, but this was just another sunset where it was just this slice of light between the dark clouds of a storm and the darkness of the landscape. And I called this one Torn Apart because I did it last year in late spring when the pandemic, I felt like, was dividing us and pulling us all apart. And this seemed to me like it was a tear in the earth and in the sky, but there was still that little bit of light to be seen. And then this was a more recent one, again, a sunset, but very different, with the bright blue sky still visible, but the very yellow of the sun going down. And then always the fascination with the lines that are made by the jet trails across our great sky as everybody flies over, going wherever their busy lives are taking them. And I always feel like they're missing out on a lot by flying over instead of driving through and seeing the land and witnessing it, because from up there they don't see this. They see something quite different. And then the last piece I had to show you is really just kind of a one-off, but it's a direction that I've been intrigued about trying to go. This was a piece that was created for an exhibit they had at USD, where Cindy Struckman Johnson donated Ms. magazine covers, and then they asked people to create artwork somehow based on covers, and people were able to interpret that any way they wanted. But I saw this great cover that had Alice in Wonderland, and I loved the Alice in Campus Land and a lot of the headlines that were on the front, but it's all embroidery. And I'm intrigued, I have been for a while, about how to use maybe the wool felting and embroidery, or embroidery and painting on fabric or canvas to depict the land. I don't know why I decided to do this, because it took way longer than I was still working on it like the night before it was due to be put into the exhibit. But I loved it. I love the contemplative nature of traditional women's crafts and how we can use those and interpret those in unusual ways. And I like the idea of, as women, reclaiming some of that heritage and using that as a way to express other things, and challenging that division between the line and between fine art and craft, and how people would interpret that. So when I entered the needle felting in the biennial, I didn't really know if it would be accepted or not, because it can be seen as a craft medium as opposed to fine art. So I was pleasantly surprised when it was accepted.
We don't have craft prejudices here.
That's great. So that's what I had.
Terrific. I love your work.
Thank you.
And so I forgot to mention too, what we did last time is we kind of saved up questions. You can throw them in the chat anytime. And then we'll try and kind of toss it around to the artist at the end. So we'll kind of move through and hear from everybody. But if you think of any questions for Carol, go ahead and put them in the chat now and we'll get to them at the end, because I think I've got one or two from that. So I'll probably put them out there. Okay, so we were actually going to go to Deborah next if she is ready and she's plugged in.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm ready. I'm plugged in. I don't know how long the power will last, but I have a little auxiliary pack, so that should help. If I need to hold it up higher, okay. Jodi, would you play my power?
I sure can. I'll pull that up here.
I'm afraid that anything extra off of this little computer on this little Wi-Fi may not go well. So.
Okay, let me get in here and share now. Okay. Oh, the view. There, how we go there? Does it look good for everybody?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. For many years, I've been really fascinated by, the natural world, as many of you are, I can see. And so I've gone from being very realistic to more abstract. And this is a monotype. And what I like about monotype is that you can do many, many layers, and it's very forgiving. But you have to just dive in and start putting things down. And you can develop as it goes along. And so I usually start with making 4 pieces of paper that have a similar, I'll start with one, do a ghost, add more to it. So there's 4 that end up, sometimes I do 6 that will end up looking pretty much the same for the first layer. And then I do the same thing with subsequent layers. After the first one's dry, 2 or 3 days, then I'll go ahead and start layering other colors on and try and do it the same. So what I have is 4 that can be changed drastically towards the end or developed in a different direction completely, like halfway through. But I have to respond to the things that I put down. So that's pretty much how I've been working lately. You could go on to the next one if you wouldn't mind.
Did that share for everybody?
Thank you. Jodi, I'm so sorry. I should have mentioned earlier, but I just didn't realize that it would be so iffy here. This is Midnight in the Garden, or Moonlight in the Garden. And again, I've started to be much looser in my approach. When I first started doing monotypes, oftentimes I do them on location, and they would be almost photographic with a monochrome brown paper. So sometimes they look like old landscapes. So anyway, I wanted so much to change things up that I started doing things abstractly, and it was really, it was very freeing for me. Jodi, would you switch to the next one? I hope it's in the series from my Lone Road series.
What happened?
You there, Jodi?
Jodi might have frozen. But she'll come back.
Can talk. Okay, is this being broadcasted at all? then when it freezes?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Should I
It's
keep-
just that Jodi's connection
Yeah,
dropped
okay.
off.
So right now I'm in Idaho. I'm taking a break from the South Dakota winter and just things. And so I've been teaching fundamentals of drawing through Zoom. And today, yesterday and today, I've been drawing landscapes around this area of Idaho that I really love. It's on the Lochsaw River. It's between Lola, Montana and Lewistown, Idaho. And so it's a pretty beautiful place. Anyway, I've been drawing, and then I hope to show my students that are in Rapid City the things I've been drawing and how to translate landscape into drawing. Well, if this won't work for me, maybe I could forego showing any of my other stuff. It's
Well, and
totally
maybe-
up to.
Yeah, why don't we come back to you? And
Okay.
yeah, and
I think, yeah, we should. Or should whatever. I have to move
Yeah.
on at any rate.
all right.
Please
So
do.
so I will introduce Susan. There you are, Susan. And we'll come back to you, Deborah, when Jodi is able to come back on. Got to be flexible here.
Jodi too, didn't we?
All right. Okay, so Susan, you're on now.
Okay, so I'm ready to go.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Susan Drey. I really didn't become serious about my art until about five years ago. So age 60, that's when I was able to really take it seriously and become an artist I wanted to be. I always felt like I had to, provide for my family and make an income before, but now I drive a school bus, so I can have a little supplement there and I can do what I want. So
Okay,
There, yep.
now I want to go there. Oh, this is working fine. Well, I'm Phyllis.
Perfect, yes. Well, welcome, Phyllis.
Thank you. And I am a fiber artist, weaver, spinner. And the first number of weavings, actually, I hate to say I enjoyed the pandemic. I never left the house. I have multiple looms, multiple spinning wheels, all the yarn anyone could ever want. And I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't be with anyone. So I just actually did a whole lot of weaving. In somewhere
Wow, that's
2019, I started, I set up a warp. Setting up a warp on a loom is you've decided what you're going to do for the next 2 years because it determines how you weave. And because setting up a warp takes about 150 hours just to get it on the loom. That's the base threads. You then have the base threads for 12 to 15 weavings or thereabouts, if that's understandable at all. But quick 101 weaving. Anyways, in 2019, I set up a warp that you see in this one, there's various patterns. Well, the pattern was set up, the original warp was chosen. It's a warp or design called Sherman's Defeat. And I expected to do a bunch of political commentary weavings. Well, that left with Sherman's Defeat. I then went into my nature and moon and landscapes, and so much for politics. I didn't want to deal with politics. I should mention I'm a county commissioner, so I deal with politics altogether too much as in the local scene. But anyways, so this is called Blood Moon. And if you look at it, there's a number of variations on utilization of the pattern. I'm using texture and tapestry techniques. The landscape of the forest, the river, the mountains, and the moon. This was actually the first moon weaving, called Silvery Moon. Again, same theme of forest or landscape, river, then it goes into water or sky and the moon. This one was thought more on your romantic, the evening silvery moon and what we all just love to look up at. This one is actually one of my favorites because it came from a memory. These were all done between October 2019 to today. The harvest moon actually was it 19, I started to say a 60-year career. When you look at it, I started making potholders at 6 years old. So I've had a 70-year career, if I count that. I turned 76 next week. Anyways, the Harvest Moon, I was working for a number of years with the artisan schools and worked in over 50 communities. I did a residency where the kids and I lived in Winter, South Dakota, actually in Hamill, South Dakota, if anyone ever heard of that one. And we were driving out in the hinterlands there one night, and the moon was coming up over the horizon, and I literally was moonstruck. The kids started screaming, saying, "Mom, you're going in the ditch." And it's always intrigued me, that incredible thing that happens when the moon comes up over the horizon and is 20 times larger than when it's up in the sky.
Wow.
Hello. This is Moon Kiss, or I have multiple names for all these, and it's a tapestry that's larger than the other ones. I grew up on Cape Cod and New Hampshire on lakes, so water and then thinking of the prairie as an ocean has always intrigued me. I also started experimenting with using really intense texture to really push perspective within a weaving, which this one I feel has been one of my favorites for a long time. It is what it looks like on the Missouri River, and using the texture again to show depth, just delineating the reflection of that incredible sunsets that we get. The other point of this one, it is 80% hand spun, and that same hand spun is natural dye. This one actually, if you figure it, took about 8 months to work.
Wow.
In the middle of the pandemic, I started getting a little wacky. I love my garden. And then I started playing with my garden in my weaving and knitting and crocheting and texture. And there's butterflies in here. And the next one has bees and butterflies and you name it. Some
Cool.
stars from a Christmas package that I got. If I see something around the house I want to use, I'll pick it up and throw it in the weaving. Along the same time, I started crocheting, knitting. Well, I started knitting tribbles. My daughter, who was a set designer on Star Trek, said, "Mom, you can't do tribbles. You'll get sued." So they turned into hedgehogs, which then it ended up that my golf clubs that I was not using became knit into flamingos. I don't have pictures of that because they're not finished, but this is the one that's in the governor's show. And again, with the reflection on the river, and got me going on a whole series of smaller pieces. That's the main loom. I have multiple, but this is the piece of equipment that I use to create these things. This, in some, I'm going straight from my mind as I weave. Every thread is a brush stroke, and then some I'm actually using some photographs and working off of the photograph just as a reference. I won't go any further on the complications of a loom. This is another of the more recent ones done from a photograph. I was just always been intrigued by light and light reflections. And that's the photograph. This is the weaving. This was done from just what I see is, as Carol Gouy mentioned, we get spectacular sunsets in Vermilion, and this was out my window. We've gone back about, 10 years here to the watercolor weavings, which is another whole series. And this is how I mentioned before that warp determines the type of weave you do. This was a very fine cotton warp, and then the weft that is woven over and under and through and creates the final image is fine silks, cottons, linens, and then man-made fibers. There's even what's called eyelash yarn in here. This piece has always a lot of meaning for me. It was done just after I was, defeated cancer. I had bladder cancer, which they don't know, but the chemo may have created, but I ended up with rheumatoid arthritis. So I was having troubles even moving. So the weight of the world, which is the name of this piece, was is an imagery of what I was feeling at that time. Trying to get the feeling of weather and South Dakota prairie. This is spring rains. That's the view out my window, and influences everything, most of the pieces that I do. This is what I live with daily, morning to night. See any influence? This is one done in the springtime. Realize that each of these pieces take anywhere from a month and a half to 3 months to weave. But I'm trying to capture a moment in time. This one is called Next to Last Snow. It's, the stalks peeking up through the snow, that icy cold sky. And at the end of that warp, I started, this was the transition piece between the next, all those other ones that I showed. And back to the hands, yeah. It's called Butterfly Forest. And I started playing with the very fine warp, but trying to put in more of a tapestry technique. We're going back 40 years now, or is it more? Yeah. I put this in just because it is one of the weavings I did back in the 80s. And it was a commentary of our social situation back then, which is a very strong, I wish I still owned this and could show it. It is down in Atlanta, but just did a very large weaving that was working on the hope and peace between all of us. And just to say that the moon has been with me forever. This one was probably done about 1975, and a landscape more of New England than it is South Dakota. as I said, I came from New England. I went to school at Syracuse, New York. I figured I'd put in a little bit. I could find something that I did at Syracuse. I actually was a silversmithing major, and because I didn't get along with the professor real well, I ended up more in ceramics and weaving. And the weaving is called Three Women. It's a double weave, which was accomplished on the loom flat. And then your warp is in 2 layers, or your whole weaving is 2 layers, which go in and out, out and in to each other's to create the mold or the structure. And that's 60, 70, 80 years or whatever, not 80, I haven't been that far, 60 years in as short as I can make it. Thank you. Did I make it in time?
You're good, and I have to apologize for my Wi-Fi drop, everybody. Thank you for stepping in and shifting, Carolyn and Deborah. I'm so
Sure.
sorry, but you thought your Wi-Fi was going to be a problem, and mine like disappeared. I can't even find it on my computer now. I had to go mobile hotspot, so I'll work with the router later.
Oh,
What happened to?
is there time for me to finish mine?
Yeah, there's plenty
Definitely.
of time. Yeah.
Yeah, and Carolyn, did you get it so you can share it in case I have problems again? Just because
In case, yeah, I can do it. Let's see, Phyllis, if you could unshare.
Oh, is that, I'm trying to figure out how to get back, and I've just
Let's see.
mini pictures and I lost the big one. It's almost like I have to go off and come back on. There.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Phyllis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we didn't get to Susan yet either, right?
No, we'll circle
Okay.
back around. Yeah.
Sounds
So
good.
Now I'm spotlighting you, Deborah.
Partway through. We both got partway through, and if there's time, Susan's still on, right? Susan,
Oh
you
yeah,
there?
we'll have time. We've got time for everybody.
Yeah.
We're good.
Good.
All right, I'll share Deborah's slides. And this should work. There, you should be seeing those.
I see. Yeah. You could go to the 3rd slide.
Okay. That's right. We've been here before, haven't we?
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. The next one. That's good. Wow. Thanks.
The next 2, this and the piece after it, are from a series I did called The Lone Road. And it was about the sensation of riding my motorcycle. And so through, let me see, it was about 2003 to 2012, I rode with my partner at the time, and he had shown me all these fabulous roads. And so I never had time to do art. And it was the season I used to say, boy, I can hardly wait to go on a road trip so I could draw. And then I got on a motorcycle and I couldn't stop. So I came back to my studio and started thinking about the sensations of riding. And this one is called Butterfly Kiss. It's, I looked down one time and a butterfly had hit my face shield and then was blown off. And my mother always used to say that a butterfly kiss was like, your eyelashes flutter. So anyway, it was just a reminder of that. Is it possible to do the next slide?
Yes, there.
All right. And this is called Tornado Warning. So this was about riding, of course, through the prairie and also through the craters of the moon in Idaho. Those intense blowing winds. And so it's just kind of abstract feeling about the way that the weather affects you when you're riding your motorcycle. And then I have the two remaining, or the one remaining, is during the pandemic. If you could switch to the next video. This is my dog Lale, and she's been my companion since last June. And we go everywhere. She's sitting at my feet right now. And this is from Dinosaur Hill above where I live. And it's just, she's very endearing, although she's neurotic. And I think, is there another one? I tried to get another one in there, but I didn't want to flood it with too many images. Ah, yeah. And this one is in the show that's going to open at the Doll in May. It's called Proof of Life. And so, again, it's part of the, you know, the divergence that I went, just painting these little paintings. They're small. They're on gouache on black paper. And they kind of show the personality of my new little buddy. And it's good fun. And I've done other people's pets as well. So anyway, that's it for me. Any questions? Oh, that's right. There will be questions later. Never mind.
Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing the rest of Deborah's and Phyllis's talk when I can watch it later, because I missed so much of it. But we are to the last of our four, Susan, and so do go ahead and start throwing in questions in the chat box if you have any for any of the artists, and we'll hear from Susan. Thank you.
Okay, I tried to share the screen before and it didn't work. So if it doesn't work this time, I'm going to ask you to do it, Jodi. So I'm going to try this again. Slideshow. Slideshow. From beginning. Hey! I think it worked.
It did.
Okay. Yay! I really didn't get as an artist until 2016, 5 years ago. Hang on, I keep getting a message that Zoom.
Yours is freezing up.
Yes, it looks like we lost her. Oh no.
Back.
Jodi.
Can I try this again?
Sure.
Why did I go? What is going on here? Should I try again to share my screen?
Do. Unless, Jodi, you have the slides?
You know what? Since you were able to share it so well, now it's not sending to you. I will try. I'll try. And I've got it in my outbox to you to Carolyn in case it doesn't come through, but I'll attempt to see if.
You're going to try it, Jodi?
I am.
Instead of me? Okay. I'm so sorry.
And then maybe your audio won't be such a challenge. Okay. I'm about to try and pull it up and we'll see if
why does this have to be me?
You know, sounds like we're having some internet trouble tonight. So it happens.
We're all learning perseverance.
And yes, exactly. Welcome to the pandemic, right? Okay, slideshow.
I think nature's
from the beginning.
Yeah. Does it look good?
It looks great.
Okay, go for it.
I'm going. Okay, so this is me, my website, my phone number. Next slide. So in 2016, I was working as a landscape designer. I'm trained in architecture. I practiced architecture for almost 20 years, but art really is my true calling. So I just was seeing all the birds. I was in Omaha, Nebraska, and they were just so beautiful. And I'm like, I'm going to paint these. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull out my old watercolors from college and I'm going to start painting. So this was one of my first paintings and I was really happy with it. It was in a show and it sold right away. Anyway, next slide, please. So I was doing these birds and they were like really popular. People were loving them. And I had a couple like small shows at breweries and things. But then I did a workshop with Daniel Marshall. He's a watercolor artist, because I want to expand, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to paint birds forever. I love them, but I love so many other things. So I was really interested in street scenes, and he did some, and I entered in the 2017 watercolor show here at the Doll, and got a couple of awards for that. And I loved doing the street scenes. It's just, I mean, it tied into my architecture background and everything.
What is it?
Um,
What is it?
Next slide, please.
Becoming.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking. I just wanted to say a little bit about, oh, you missed
There we go. Are we there?
one. There we go. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So this was another one I did a year later of the Alex Johnson. And I guess I just wanted to say I mean, there's a couple things that are really important to me when I create my art. And one is the drawing. You know, I really love drawing. The line work is very important to me. And I like my lines to be expressive and say something, you know, about the essence of my subject. And not only the line work, but I also like to have, I like to have a really solid drawing. That means, you know, like the proportions are right and it's very believable to the people looking at it. And I also like a dynamic composition. I don't always achieve those two things, but those are the two basic elements that I like to have happen in all of my paintings. So I did these street scenes for a while, and then I had to move on to something else. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So the next year, this would be the third year of my art career. I started doing wildlife, the bison, and then there's going to be some horses. And I really enjoy this. I love the structure. I love doing humans and animals. You know, I love the structure of the body and these horses. You can go to the horses. So, yeah, I mean, horses to me are so beautiful. And that's one thing that inspires me. I mean, everything I paint, I absolutely love. I mean, for some reason or another, I love their bodies, their physique, the structure, the light, all of those things. Okay, so yeah, so then it was these wild animals for a year or so, and then we'll go to the next one. And then in 2019, I think what I love the most of anything is drawing and painting people. So I went back to that. This is the one on the left is Sophia Beatty. She's a singer-songwriter that lives here in Rapid City, performing at the Tinderbox. And then on the right is a guy that I used to know in Baltimore when I hung out in the corner bars. So that one, the one on the right, won first place last year in the Watercolor Society show at the Doll. So I just, I'm really enjoying doing portraits. And then we'll go to the next one. And so then last year during the pandemic, I was a little worried about my income and everything. So I put out this thing saying, you know, like people were seeing that I did commission work and portraits. So I put out a notice on Facebook saying, you know, like, I want to do some more commissions, you know, let me know what you have. And I did probably like 7 or 8 or 9 last year. And these are a few of them. I did animals and mostly people. I absolutely love doing them. And one thing that's really amazed me is when I'm doing these portraits, I feel like I I feel like I absolutely know this person, you know, like there's something, I can't even explain it. I just feel like I intimately know this person and their personality. And the more I get into the detail of it, the more it becomes apparent that, you know, like I'm connecting with this person. So that was really fun. Okay, next. And then as the pandemic year went on, I started doing some other things. This is, I kind of wanted to do abstract. This isn't abstract per se, but it's like more of a pattern than a painting of an actual scene. So this was just, you know, a photo I took of some trees and vines in the fall, and I really had fun with this. It was like a new kind of step forward for me. We'll go to the next one. So much happened. The pandemic year was really good for me too. It was like I was so productive, and I drive a school bus, as I said. So I started doing some paintings of the kids on the school bus, and those are going to be in my upcoming show at the Doll, which opens in June. But anyway, so this is one of my favorite kids, and I love doing the portraits, and I just feel like this captures her so well. And I did get permission from the parents, and they were like in awe. So it was great for me and for them. Okay, next. And this is the one I have in the biennial. It relates back to the other one that was kind of a pattern of trees, and this is kind of a pattern. It's like, I hope it's I want to get closer to being a little more abstract and not quite so realistic. So I'm moving in that direction all the time. This actually isn't in South Dakota. It's when I lived in Omaha. It's a park there, but I just love the light and the shapes and the lines. So yeah. And I think there's one more. Yeah, so I'm still like working towards a little more towards abstraction and using my line work a little more. The one on the left is based on a photo I took of one of my kids when we were on a field trip, and she's at the fish hatchery in Spearfish, and she was like standing in front of the tank, but it looks like this fish is like a head ornament. Anyway, I loved the kind of juxtaposition of all that. And then the one on the right is something that's always been special to me, is drawing dancers in the human form. So, and that one's actually acrylic. I usually do watercolor, but I am testing out some acrylic as well. So that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so
I love those portraits.
Yeah, go ahead, Deborah.
Oh, I love those portraits. Those
Yeah.
are great.
You know, I think that's something important too. You said, Susan, about falling in love with the scenes. And I find that artists, if they're painting something they're not really interested in or passionate about, they don't usually do their best work. I think you have to have, your heart has to be in it somehow. There has to be something that enamors you and carries you through that kind of intrigue and passion and excitement. Or often I feel like I can see it in the artist's hand in the finished piece. So so everybody go ahead and throw out questions for anybody you might have. We've got a little bit of time left, but I wanted to know what the needle felting, Carol, so those are intense colors. Can you play with, when you're needle felting, those different, I mean, you've got some very dark and then the very intense, almost fluorescent. Can you layer that on there, or does that intense fluorescence like have to be kind of a pure thing, or could you do dark and layer over and get that kind of intensity of color and that saturation?
You can really manipulate it any way that you want, because you can pull it down to where you have a single thread and felt in a single thread, and you can, you know, layer colors just in the same way that you would with paint. And you can pull it out. So yeah, and you can just continue to play with it and manipulate it and get whatever effect that you want.
Cool. Yeah, I really like that you're all have that color and light, watercolor, monoprints, painting, wool, weaving. It's such, there's such a similarity in terms of what you guys are capturing, and but through such different processes and materials and media, really.
I really liked how Carol's pastels look like weavings, and
Right.
especially that second that you showed, that was really powerful.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask Phyllis, how large are most of those weavings? I couldn't get a sense of size on the first ones you showed.
Oh, the moon ones were about, what, 18 inches wide by about 26 inches long. The one, the landscape or waterscape sunset of the river was 30 by 45, I think, 30 inches by 45.
Yeah, that was hard to,
Yeah,
when I saw your loom, then I'm like, oh, those are a lot bigger than I thought. Yeah.
they are quite, some of them are quite large. And then the watercolor weavings are basically, what, 15 by, or 20 by 18 in the actual weaving.
Okay. Wow.
And then they're framed pieces. Yeah, because I treat them like a watercolor. And so they are matted and framed.
Oh, okay.
They look gorgeous, matted and framed.
Yeah.
You really you have such a range of sizes from small. Do you have a preference, or do you like to be working on different size pieces?
It's the loom I'm working on that allows me to do a certain size. And so I will set up and I'll do it. I don't have a preference. In fact, right now I have a hand loom on my dining room table. I have the big loom that I showed. I have 3 others in the garage. So I have multiple sizes.
I loved how the warp. I loved how the warp left that amazing pattern in the sky. That was really fascinating. You just got so much texture. The very first one that you showed.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Oh, I think it was the red sunset, or blood moon.
Blood moon. Yeah.
That was really powerful.
It is fun working with manipulating the patterns. It's
Yeah.
thing that, to my knowledge, my use of pattern and then using it in landscape is not something done. I have difficulty getting into weaving shows because
Really?
I technique so much that they're kind of foreign to weavers.
Purists. There's too many purists out there, right? We like transitional things at the South Dakota Art Museum.
I can't stand pure, I don't,
I thought
me, I cannot. I push the limits all the time.
Half of my watercolor paintings that I showed would not have been allowed in the annual Watercolor Society show because I had ink or pastel or pencil or.
Even in watercolor, there's purists. I didn't know that.
Oh, they are more than anybody. There's the Watercolor Society.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was like the last bastion of purity, was the watercolors, because everywhere else, painting, weaving, sculpture, it all is like, much more free form and forgiving. And the watercolors just seem so rigid. And I'm really thrilled to see the stuff that you're doing with it, Susan, because it was just like, really, it's groundbreaking.
And I'm excited about seeing Carol Gooey, who lives just down the street, that she's,
Okay, so
I have some fiber for you.
I love that. I love that. I wasn't sure how familiar you two were with each other's work, you know.
I'm
It's
not
fun.
familiar with her work. I know her real well.
Sure. I love it. That's the fun stuff we get to see as curators when we juried the show, you know, so that I think that's what's fun about this is connecting that, which, you know, I always do visually and mentally when I'm kind of mapping out the show or we're doing the jurying process. You see those things kind of naturally group themselves, and these chats I think are a fun way to draw that to the surface, show it to the artists and the public as well. So I don't see any questions coming through, but we're about ready to wrap up. I just want to say, I don't know if, yeah, go ahead, Susan, and I'll finish. You got something to throw in, yeah.
So you did that Ms. Magazine thing, right? So I could see that all the embroidery was on the figure and all that, but what about the words in the background? How was that done?
Well, I was going to say Karen had asked in the chat about that, and it was a really simple, I Googled how to print on fabric, and you iron the fabric onto freezer paper and send it through my cheapo Epson printer.
Oh, okay.
And it printed just like it would have on paper, but it printed it right onto the fabric. And then I think I heat set it with my iron, but not a complicated process. And it didn't ever, you know, you're handling that all the time, and it was in an embroidery hoop, and it didn't ever degrade or smear or anything. But it was my very cheap Epson printer with muslin ironed onto freezer paper. I didn't know what would happen to my printer after I did that, but it was really easy.
No,
really,
I love
really
that.
easy.
But I was curious how that.
Because that was a challenge to try to figure out, because I really wanted to have the cover. And
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Google was my friend once again.
God bless Google.
And simple processes that I could do with what I had and not have to, you know, make a huge investment in equipment for an experimental process, which you don't want to do.
Well, I was just going to ask Phyllis and Deborah if you've heard back from the Art for State Buildings crew.
No.
Then I'm going to announce the news that both of you have purchases coming, because I was on that selection panel. So that's your big, yeah. That's my big,
out of the pandemic, I'll make some money. Oh,
yeah, you will. So they
I have been totally out of touch.
Yeah,
So
and
what
yours
were
is
you saying?
a big triptych, Deborah. So I was excited to see both of
the
your
one that
work
I
there.
Hey,
can
Yeah.
you
Tim and I are going to sign off here, but thanks for coming to our house. Come again.
Thank you.
wow, how cool.
Yeah, so
Yay,
you'll hear-
thank you. I need
Yeah, you'll hear really soon from Patrick. He's sending out the lists and everything to everybody. So you'll have pieces in state buildings permanently collected for the state. So congrats.
Jodi, which
Nice.
one, or do you?
Thank you.
I'm
Good
gonna
night,
try.
all.
I know
Thank
I can
you
look
so
that up
much.
for you, Phyllis. Hang on one sec.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll wrap it up. Thanks everybody for coming. We'll see. Hopefully you come back next Tuesday to hear from our next group of artists. And yeah, thanks for bearing with us with the tech problems we had tonight too. So sometimes it's a little bit of juggling that happens, but we can stay on our toes.
And next week when you register, that registration link will be good for the rest of the season. We've figured out how to do that, so you won't have to register and re-register.
Get it on your calendar and
Excellent.
get those reminders. Yeah.
Yep, and we'd love to see you back.
Yeah. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Good
So
night.
hang on a second. I'll look up my list for you.
Hey, this is exciting.
Yeah, it was so fun to see your works there and advocate for them.
Well, yeah, and she forgot to tell me that I could reapply. So it was a real fast. It was Friday that I got everything together, and of the beyond the day it was supposed to, they let me because they
Okay.
forgot to tell me.
Yep, yours is the Prairie Illusions Missouri River Bluffs piece.
Jodi, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So what show is that Deborah and?
So it's usually it's an annual thing through the South Dakota Arts Council. They do an Art for State Buildings program where the Arts Council has funding to acquire pieces to be on display in governmental buildings. So this was, I was supposed to be the first time on it in 2020, and they delayed it because they had to divert a lot of funding to COVID relief stuff. And so what Phyllis is talking about, you must have applied for the 2020 and then they postponed it.
Right.
So anybody who had applied in 2020, they moved it over to 2021 and opened up new applicants. But you just go to South Dakota Arts Council and you can find info on the Art for State Buildings program. So those are pretty nice big pieces with some considerable paychecks for Phyllis and
Yes.
Deborah to place
Very
and build.
nice.
So
Arts
I'm
for
excited to
State
come back.
Buildings. Okay, I'm gonna.
Yeah,
look.
Art for State Buildings. Yep.
Something I forgot to mention, which I don't know if anyone's missing that information, that also I have a show along with my family
Oh, at the pavilion.
Washington Pavilion called 3/4 Packard, 1/4 Lockhart. It's up to
What a great name.
I love it.
my daughter, my son, myself, and my son's wife.
Yeah, and actually too, you could let Claire know when you see her. We also selected suffragist Sue. Patrick will tell you real soon. We just confirmed the list literally today. He had compiled it, so the info's coming soon.
Oh,
Which I love because it's a very a hilarious piece that's kind of political. So I was happy that got bought for a state building.
oh, good. Yeah, she does some pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I saw plenty more Packard and Lockhart when I was doing that. Yeah, so congrats.
It has been commented that one has to have an MFA in order to marry into the Packard family.
I believe it.
We check all credentials.
Right.
So funny.
Proper vetting.
Yes.
Goodbye, Karen.
Bye, everybody. And Jodi, thank you so much. I'm glad you had the backup because I
Yeah.
couldn't click on slideshow because there was something blocking it.
I think there's something with network too. So it must have been too much bandwidth for you. And I'm having internet problems. You are. Sometimes there's a wave of it where people in the region are.
I'm like,
Well, and now I know, because I think last time I'd sent copies to Carolyn too, and I forgot to send her copies of all of them. So now I know my internet can definitely fail. So I'll make sure to get everything.
thank
sent
you
forward.
for having
Well,
my back.
Thanks for bearing with us. Yeah.
And Dee, I had to bring you on to this since we're kind of in
Hey,
the
Dee.
final grouping here. So good to see you. Oh, you're on mute, but
I just want to say this was one of the best programs I have ever watched. I love all of you artists. This was so much fun.
It's so fun to hear from
beautiful.
them all, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just one of the best hours I've ever spent. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's good
Thank
to
you.
hear.
Technical glitches.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
tuned in.
when I'm editing the video, I can see if those glitches are, if I should just slice them out,
can
and I
slice
can
and
do
dice
that,
and
you know.
clean it up a
but,
little bit.
I think it makes it kind of just organic and real. And
Yeah.
I
mean,
typed
what are
in
you gonna
at the
do?
end, this was a super program. It was just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Dee is one of our biggest supporters at the museum. She's on our art guild, so she is. We love Dee and Nels. Yep.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you enjoyed it. Yay.
is Nels making you dinner? That's why he's not here right now.
He actually went, he watched most of it. And then when it was time to sort of be almost over, he went to watch the rest of the news hour.
Oh, okay.
I thought maybe he was
Multitasking,
refreshing
yeah.
your cocktail. He
No,
should refresh the cocktail too.
We did have a cocktail.
Good.
I'm almost finished.
Yeah, you shamed me into it last time. So instead of my sparkling water, I added some wine to my sparkling water.
You
But
got to be a role model.
Yeah, this was
Okay.
like the best Zoom ever.
Oh,
well, and And Jodi, what I liked was at the end, we had time to bring the artist back on, and
Yeah.
then when we can spotlight everybody, that conversation that you all
I like
had
that too.
together is wonderful. And
Mhm.
even if there aren't questions from people through chat, that was,
I totally agree.
I think
That
it's
was
actually
fun.
more interesting to hear your reactions to each other's works. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, it was
learning
good.
each time. It's going to just get
Yeah. Well, and
better
you
and
know,
better
each
and
time
better.
it's a little bit different. It's a little different mix of artists and approaches. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what all unfolds over the course of the next 7 weeks yet. So.
And Jodi, I think, has told you we're crossing our fingers that we could have a closing reception, depending on all the COVID protocols at that point. So that'd be
Yeah,
June
something right at the
13th
end.
is the last day in Brookings.
Oh, really?
So we'll see.
We'll see. We're kind of not scheduling anything until we know, you know, how comfortable people are. But if we do it then we've got the advantage of, we've got the Anderson Plaza back of the museum. So people could be outdoors and in, which outdoors is so much safer. We could even place food tables outside so people can, right? So we're thinking about it. I think it would be fun, way to wrap that up and celebrate it. But thanks for playing with us here. This is super fun too. So
This has been super fun.
yeah.
I know I did a whole lot of slides and talked really fast.
No, that was perfect. It worked out perfectly.
But
We
that
even
being
had
said,
tech problems and we were still on time, so it's good.
okay, with that many years, how to fit, pick and choose is extremely hard.
I'm sure. I mean, I've been part of the art scene for like 25 years and it's already hard for me. I can't imagine 60, like how to keep track of all of that.
And I didn't get to put in my favorite picture of myself when I was much younger, water skiing, and I was on the top of a pyramid because I used to be. I wanted to put that in, but I guess didn't.
You did for the guild chat though, didn't you?
I think I did.
I think you did. I think you did.
My claim to fame.
Well, that's a legacy thing, Phyllis. It's a legacy thing.
Yes.
So. Okay, well, I think I smelled dinner heating up. So thanks all for coming. And
Alright.
go out and have some lasagna. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can watch for the video. We'll get it posted in the next day or so, and I'll tag you on social media when I share it, so you can share it as well.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Hey, bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
With you.